Have you ever felt stuck in a day that never ends? That you are standing on the threshold of a new life, right in front of the door? But an invisible force, born in your own depths, pulls your hand away from the handle at the very last decisive moment? You say it's Groundhog Day, you call it procrastination, laziness, lack of willpower. But these are false names. They are labels inscribed on a false map that only leads you deeper into the labyrinth of self-blame. To truly understand this internal sabotage, we must discard this map and look at the secret blueprints of our psyche, left to us by the greatest cartographer of the soul, Carl Gustav Jung. Over the next hour, we will not just analyze this problem. We will take 3 precise steps. You will understand why your brain is actually trying to save you by sabotaging your best intentions. You will learn what great task this paralysis sets before you. And most importantly, you will receive the key to outsmart this inner guardian, not by fighting it, but by forming a wise alliance with it. If you are ready to stop fighting with yourself and start understanding yourself, our journey inward begins right now. Let's pause for a moment. Let's take a deep, slow breath. And let's be completely honest. At least here, in this space, alone with ourselves. Remember this morning, the sound of the alarm clock, which doesn't awaken but rather rips you out of another, perhaps more real life. The taste of morning coffee on your tongue. It's no longer a ritual of pleasure, but just fuel you pour into a mechanism to continue its predictable movement. There are no more notes of Arabica in this taste, only the aftertaste of an endless Monday. The familiar route you take every day no longer feels like a path. It's a rut, deep, carved into the very earth of your life, and your feet step into it with a fatal automatic submission. You know every turn, every crack in the asphalt, and this knowledge doesn't soothe, but suffocates. The light of the screen has become the only window to the world, but the landscape behind this window never changes. And here it is, the most cruel paradox. Objectively, everything is fine. The bills are paid, there's a roof over your head, there are no real, visible storms in your life, but you are slowly drowning in this absolute calm. Safety has become a cage, its walls built from compromises and decisions postponed for later. And it is this comfort that feels like suffocation. Beneath the surface of this external tranquility, somewhere deep under your ribs, lives a quiet panic. It's not a scream, but a barely audible, constant hum. The feeling that you are watching a movie about someone else's painfully familiar life. You say the right words, make the right gestures, but you feel like a ghost at your own party and the calendar on the wall. It's no longer a map of the future. It looks at you like a predator that slowly, day by day, eats your one priceless life. And if anything of what has been said has resonated in your soul, I ask you to hear me now. Hear not with your mind, but with your whole being. Know this, you are not broken, you are not lazy, and you are definitely not alone in this feeling. That heavy burden of shame that you may be carrying, the thought that something is wrong with you, is the main and most poisonous myth that we must destroy today. Your experience is not a sign of a defect, but a sign of a living soul that refuses to fall asleep in a comfortable prison. A truly broken person would not feel this anguish. They would have resigned themselves. Your pain, your apathy, your inner paralysis. This is the roar of a healthy organism that refuses to breathe poisoned air. It is the cry of your deepest self, which remembers who you were meant to become. It knows that you were created for more than just repeating yesterday. Your apathy is not an absence of feelings. It is a paradoxical act of loyalty. Loyalty to that vast, unclaimed part of you that you may have betrayed for the sake of safety and predictability. It is a kind of soul strike, refusing to work in a factory that produces meaningless days. So know this state is not your enemy. It is your most honest ally. And now that we have removed the heavy artillery of accusations and shame from this battlefield, I will ask you to entertain for a moment an almost sacrilegious thought. A thought that may at first seem absurd, but I ask you to just try it on, like unfamiliar clothing. What if the very force that prevents you from changing, that invisible hand that pulls you back from the door, is not your enemy? What if this internal saboteur, whom you have cursed and tried to overcome for years, is actually your most devoted, though completely blind protector? Think about its persistence. Malice is rarely so consistent. Self-hatred rarely possesses such tireless energy. Only absolute, albeit completely distorted, devotion works this way. What if it is protecting you from the chaos that, it seems to it, awaits beyond the threshold of a new life? From the sharp, cutting pain of possible failure? Or even more frightening, from the blinding light of success and the immense responsibility it carries? What if every time you postpone an important step, it's not your weakness, but its panicked attempt to barricade the door in the face of an unknown threat? What if every act of self-sabotage is not an act of betrayal, but a clumsy, desperate act of love? The love of that part of you that is terrified of losing the world it knows. Even if that world is a prison, this idea, the idea of a protector, not an enemy, changes everything. It turns the battlefield into a negotiation room. But to enter this room and begin a dialogue, we must first understand what language this protector speaks. And we cannot understand its language because our hearing is clogged with the noise of old, outdated ideas. And to understand the logic of this blind protector, we must first ruthlessly illuminate the false maps by which we have so long tried to find a way out. Maps covered with the inscriptions laziness, weakness, guilt. We must conduct an audit of our arsenal of beliefs and throw out the rusted weapons with which we have so long and unsuccessfully fought against ourselves. This is necessary work. Before building a new, strong bridge to our authentic self, we must clear the territory. We must demolish the dilapidated structures of false diagnoses that obstruct our view. We must destroy the myths that hold us captive, because you cannot build a new house on an old rotten foundation. Our next step is an act of intellectual courage. We are descending not into the basement of the soul, but of the mind to take out the trash. So let's begin our deconstruction. And the first, most common, and most insidious myth that lives in our consciousness sounds like this: I just lack willpower. We imagine willpower as a kind of muscle. If it's weak, you just need to pump it up through discipline and effort. We read books about self-control, set strict limits for ourselves, force ourselves, gritting our teeth. But what happens in reality? You try to break through a wall with willpower. It's like trying to start a car by pushing it when there's no gas in the tank. You can be incredibly strong. You can call friends. You can push until you're completely exhausted with a strained back and bloody sweat. But the car won't move because the problem isn't a lack of pushing force, but a lack of internal fuel. And so you fall into a vicious cycle. You try to apply force, you fail, you blame yourself for weakness, and this guilt takes away your last strength, making the next attempt even more doomed. The second myth is even more poisonous. It sounds like a verdict. I'm just lazy. Notice how the wording changes. It's no longer a lack of a resource, as in the case of willpower. It's a definition of your essence, a diagnosis of your character. It's a myth about a moral defect, and it's an absolute dead end. Because if you believe that laziness is an inherent part of your personality, then what can you do? You can't fire yourself. This myth paralyzes any attempt at analysis because it gives a simple but deadly answer to all questions. Why didn't I start? Because I'm lazy. End of story. It is an intellectual surrender that leads to only one thing: a quiet, soul-corroding shame. And finally, the third myth is the myth of the eternal search. I just need the right motivation. We look for it everywhere, in the speeches of gurus, in inspirational videos, in success stories. We wait for a sign, the perfect moment, a magical kick that will finally start the engine. But this is the trap of passive waiting. Motivation that comes from the outside is a spark, not a fire. It can flash brightly, but if that blind protector is sitting inside you with its foot on the brake, this spark will go out before it can ignite anything. You are looking for an external stimulus, not understanding that the problem is internal resistance. All these myths are just different ways of looking in the wrong direction. They force us to fight the symptoms, completely ignoring the disease. So if willpower, laziness, and motivation are false targets, then where should we look? We are making a fundamental error in diagnosis. We are mistaking the cry of a fire alarm for the fire itself. Let me offer you a new liberating idea. Your conditioned apathy, procrastination, self-sabotage is not a disease. It is a symptom. It is a fever of the soul. Remember what a fever is in the body. When an infection enters the body, the immune system raises the temperature. A fever is not pleasant, it is exhausting, it brings pain. But it is not the enemy, it is a protective reaction. It is a sign that your body is alive, that it is fighting, that it has mobilized all its resources to destroy foreign elements. The fever is not what kills us. The infection it is fighting kills us. A wise doctor doesn't just give an antipyretic. He looks for the source of the inflammation. Your psyche works in exactly the same way. When a deep rift appears in your life between how you live and who you really are, your soul gets sick. This infection is the unlived life, suppressed potential, betrayed dreams, the rejection of your true nature. And the psyche, like the body, reacts. It raises the temperature. Your apathy is the fever that burns your energy. Your procrastination is the chill that paralyzes your actions. Your self-sabotage is the delirium in which you destroy your own plans. And this is where we make our main strategic mistake. Trying to defeat procrastination with willpower is like trying to bring down a fever while ignoring the pneumonia that caused it. Yes, for a while you might feel better. You can force yourself to work for an hour or two, but the infection hasn't gone anywhere. It continues to destroy you from the inside. And tomorrow the fever will return with renewed force. Moreover, by suppressing the symptom, you are doing something worse. You are silencing the messenger who brought you a vital message. You are telling your soul, be quiet, I don't want to hear that you are in pain. Your soul raises the temperature not to torture you, but to get your attention, to make you stop and finally look inside, to burn the toxins of a false compromised life. Your procrastination is not a vice, it is a signal. And our task is not to suppress this signal, but to learn to decipher it. We have established that this fever of the soul is a signal, but a signal is useless if we don't know how to decipher it. To understand what it is signaling, we must learn to listen, not just with our ears, but with our whole being. And now I want to ask you a question that will require not analysis from you, but extreme, perhaps uncomfortable, honesty with yourself. Please remember the last time you sabotaged an important endeavor of yours. Maybe it was a work project that you postponed until the last night. Maybe it was the decision to start studying something new, which ended with hours on social media. Or an important conversation that you avoided once again. Go back to that moment. And now the most important part. What did you feel a moment before you got distracted? Not after, when the usual wave of guilt and self-flagellation came. But in that very split second, in that instant when your hand was already reaching for the phone, or you were opening a meaningless tab in your browser. What was there? Was there a barely perceptible prick of fear? The icy breath of anxiety? Maybe a strange, irrational feeling that you were stepping into forbidden territory, as if you were about to break some invisible but very important rule, established by someone a long time ago. I'm going to ask you for something specific. I'm going to ask you to actually pause this video, not for me, for yourself. Close your eyes, take one deep breath, and just listen to the echo of that feeling. Don't analyze it, don't judge it, don't try to give it a name. Just acknowledge its existence. Allow it to be. Stay with it for at least 10 seconds. If you did that, you have just taken the most important step in our journey today, because that subtle, fleeting pang of discomfort, that shadow that ran across your soul a moment before you fled, is the voice of the source of the inflammation. This is the signal. It's not just a random emotion, it contains the entire map of your inner world. It is the beginning of the thread that, if we pull it, can unravel the whole tangle. This is exactly what we were looking for. This subtle prick of fear that you hopefully felt is not a hindrance. It is the key to everything. It is the very treasure for which we descended into these twilight depths. Because this fear is not what it seems at first glance. It is not a rational fear of failure. It is not a logical fear of losing money or stability. It is something much deeper and more primal. It is the fear of oneself. The fear of those vast, unexplored continents within us that we once, a very long time ago, declared a forbidden zone. It is the fear of those parts of our personality that we exiled into the shadow because they seemed too loud, too chaotic, too dangerous for our orderly world. And no one descended into these depths with a lantern and a map as bravely and as far as the Swiss physician who became an archaeologist of the soul, Carl Gustav Jung. He was the first to understand the nature of this inner guardian at the threshold. He understood that our mind is not a single entity. It is a complex, dynamic system of checks and balances. And at the center of this system is what he called the ego. Imagine the ego as the conscious manager of your psyche. It is your internal CEO, your press secretary, and your chief director. Its job is to make decisions, build plans, shape your identity in the eyes of others, and most importantly, maintain the integrity and predictability of your world. The ego loves order. It loves clear rules. It loves when everything goes according to a familiar script. And here we come to the very heart of the problem. Any significant change, a new career, a new relationship, a new creative project is an improvisation. It is a rejection of the old approved script. And for the ego, for this guardian of order, any improvisation is a threat to its power, a step into the unknown, into chaos. The fear you felt was the alarm signal that your ego turned on. And your self-sabotage, procrastination, apathy, escaping into distractions is its desperate, instinctive attempt to regain control, to barricade the door, and not let anything new and potentially destructive into your cozy, predictable world. It is not your weakness. It is the work of your security service. So our conscious ego is the manager striving for order. And now, to truly understand the drama unfolding within you, imagine that your entire psyche is a house. Your ego is the master of this house. He lives in the living room. And this living room is perfect. It is brightly lit, impeccably clean. Every object is in its strictly defined place. This is the public part of your house, where you invite guests, society, family, colleagues. The ego wants the living room to make the right impression. He is the curator of your public identity. In this living room, only decent feelings are allowed. Moderate joy, constructive sadness, socially approved ambitions. Everything must be predictable, rational, and safe. The ego's main task is to maintain this facade in perfect order. But every house has a basement, and in your house of the psyche, this basement is locked with a heavy bolt. This is your shadow. It is a dark, damp, unexplored space where the ego, throughout your life, has thrown everything that did not fit into the concept of a perfect living room. Bursts of anger that you suppressed in childhood are thrown there. Irrational fears, envy, greed, weaknesses, everything you have ever been ashamed of are sent there. The ego considers these parts monsters that, if they break out, will destroy its beautiful world and disgrace it in front of the guests. But here lies the great and tragic irony that Jung revealed to us. The ego, in its panicked pursuit of order, is not very discerning. Along with the monsters, it throws into the basement everything that seems too chaotic, too unpredictable, too alive. Your wild, untamed creative energy is sent there because creativity is chaos. Your spontaneity, your ability to play and rejoice just for the sake of it, is sent there. Your overly bold dreams and ambitions, which seem dangerous and unrealistic to the ego, are also sent there. And the tragedy is that, along with the monsters he so fears, all the treasures of your kingdom are locked in this basement. Your passion, your life force, your unrealized potential, all of it languishes there, in the dark. And then one day, you, a conscious person, decide to change something. Start your own business. Learn to draw. Enter into a new, deep relationship. What does this mean for the ego, for the master of the house? It means one thing. You will need energy from the basement. You will need creativity, passion, courage. You need to go down and open that door. And at that moment, the ego is seized with terror. He imagines that along with the treasures, the monsters he so fears will also break out. He imagines them bursting into his perfect living room, turning everything upside down, staining the carpets, and scaring away the guests. And he does what he considers his main job. He begins to defend himself. Your self-sabotage is nothing more than the ego, with all its weight leaning against the basement door, trying to keep it closed. Your procrastination is the creaking of hinges and the grinding of the bolt. And your apathy and fatigue? It is not a lack of energy. It is all your colossal energy directed at a single, exhausting task: keeping the basement door closed. You are not lazy. You are incredibly busy. You are busy with a civil war with yourself. This dynamic of the ego and the shadow may seem abstract. Let's see how it plays out in a real, recognizable life. Let me tell you the story of Sarah. Sarah is a perfect accountant. Her world is a world of perfectly balanced spreadsheets where every debit matches a credit. Her desk is immaculate. Her career is a model of stability and responsibility. Her colleagues respect her, and her management values her. Her life, if you look at it from the outside, is that very clean, brightly lit living room. It is as predictable as a Swiss watch and just as reliable. But in the evenings, when the hum of the office subsides, Sarah feels a quiet, dull ache, a feeling as if she is living under a thick glass dome. On her computer, there is a secret, password-protected folder. In it are hundreds of photos of wild English gardens, sketches of alpine rock gardens, articles about soil properties. Sarah dreams of becoming a landscape designer. She is drawn to the earth, to the chaos of living plants, to the unpredictability of nature, to everything that is the complete opposite of her orderly life. One day, gathering all her will, she takes a decisive step. She spends a significant amount of money on a prestigious online course in landscape design. In the evening, she brews her favorite tea, sits down at her perfect desk, opens her laptop, and goes to the first lesson page. And at that very moment, a wave of inexplicable, leaden apathy washes over her. Her brain, so sharp and clear when working with numbers, suddenly becomes viscous and foggy. Her thoughts get confused. The course screen begins to radiate an almost physical threat, and her hand, as if on its own, reaches for the remote. For the next 3 hours, she watches a meaningless TV series, immersed in the anesthesia of other people's stories, while in the background, the familiar feeling of guilt gnaws at her. What happened here? Let's look at it through the metaphor of the house. Her ego, Sarah, the perfect accountant, has been building and protecting her impeccable living room for years. This image gives her security, approval, status. And her shadow, Sarah the wild gardener, is locked in the basement. She smells of earth. She is impulsive. She is ready to get her hands dirty. She is not afraid of chaos and mistakes. When Sarah opened the course page, her ego sounded the alarm. It was tantamount to her inserting the key into the basement lock. Her ego, her inner accountant, was horrified at the thought that this dirty, unpredictable, frivolous part of her personality would break out and destroy everything it had so carefully built. And the ego mobilized all its energy for defense. The crushing apathy that Sarah felt was not laziness. It was the smoke from colossal internal friction. It was all her psychic energy thrown into keeping the basement door closed. Her procrastination was not a moral failure, but a desperate act of loyalty to the image of herself that she had for so long considered the only one possible. And if Sarah's story resonated with you, even with a quiet echo, it's because her story is your story, just told in a different language. Her internal conflict is a universal human drama. There is a Sarah in each of us. In each of us, there is our own inner accountant who is deathly afraid of our inner artist. Our inner pragmatist who looks with contempt at our inner dreamer. Our inner good boy or good girl who is terrified of our inner rebel. And now I ask you to look into your own house. For a moment, stop being a spectator and become an explorer. What perfect living room has your ego built? What role have you been playing for so long and so impeccably that it has almost completely replaced the real you? The role of the responsible employee who never lets anyone down, even at the cost of your own burnout? The role of the good son or caring daughter who still lives by rules set decades ago? the role of the rational, serious person who doesn't allow themselves any nonsense or spontaneous impulses. What are the unwritten laws of your living room? What is strictly forbidden in it? Vulnerability, anger, loud laughter, useless hobbies that don't bring in money and don't lead to a measurable result, the right to make mistakes, the right to just be instead of constantly becoming someone better. So your Groundhog Day, that very feeling of being stuck that we talked about at the very beginning, is your perfectly tidy, deathly predictable living room. It is the endless ritual of maintaining order in a single room while the rest of the house is plunged into darkness. And that dull ache, that apathy, that quiet panic under your ribs, it is nothing but the hum coming from the basement. It is the vibration of the life locked up there. It is not a sign that you are broken. On the contrary, it is the surest sign that someone is still alive in your basement. That there, in the dark, your unclaimed energy, your potential, your courage, your passion are still languishing, and the colossal fatigue that overcomes you by the end of the day. Understand, it is not fatigue from life. It is not fatigue from work. It is the colossal, inhuman fatigue from the invisible, second-by-second work that your ego does, keeping the heavy oak door to the basement closed. You are exhausted not because you are doing nothing, but because you are doing the hardest work in the world, holding yourself back. You feel its presence. You feel its persistent, exhausting pressure on the door. You know it by the results of its work, by your postponed tasks and missed opportunities. But have you ever stopped to truly listen to it? Not to argue with it, not to curse it, but just to listen? You have seen your inner dynamic. And now let's take the next decisive step. Let's give a voice to your inner guardian. And now another deeper question. If your resistance to change, your inner saboteur, could speak, what exactly is it trying to protect you from? Imagine that you can put your ear to that locked basement door and hear its whisper. What would it say? Is it whispering that it's afraid of your failure? Afraid of the humiliating moment when everyone sees that you tried and failed? Afraid of judgment, ridicule, pity in the eyes of others? Afraid of confirming that very worst fear, that you are actually an imposter? Or maybe it's whispering about something even more paradoxical. Maybe it's afraid of your success, afraid of the dazzling light that will fall on you if you succeed, afraid of the huge responsibility that will come with success. After all, as long as you stand still, not much is expected of you. But success raises the bar forever, and your guardian is terrified of this new height. Or maybe its fear is even deeper. Maybe it's not afraid of failure or success, but of the process itself, afraid of the chaos that will inevitably burst into your orderly life if you open that door, afraid of losing control, stability, predictability, afraid that the creative energy breaking out of the basement will burn to the ground that fragile but so familiar living room that it has been protecting for so long. Now I want to ask you to do something bold, something that may seem uncomfortable, but which is an act of great inner strength. I ask you to go down to the comments section under this video and give a voice to your inner guardian. Write what it whispers. No long stories needed. One phrase. My guardian is afraid that I won't be able to handle the responsibility. My guardian is afraid that if I start, I will lose the security I have. My guardian is afraid that everyone will see who I really am. Do this not for us. Do this for yourself. The very act of verbalization, of turning a vague feeling into clear words, brings the shadow into the light. And then something amazing will happen. You will start reading other people's comments, and you will see your most secret, most shameful fear written by the hand of a stranger from another country. And at that moment, the shackles of loneliness will fall away. Let's create here under this video, not just a comments section, but a safe, sacred space. A space where these shadows can be brought into the light without fear of judgment, where we can collectively admit, yes, I'm afraid of that too. For a shadow that has been given a name and listened to with respect ceases to be a monster and begins its slow transformation into an ally. So we have looked behind the scenes. We have seen the frightened guardian, our inner manager, who, with the best of intentions, holds us captive. We have given a name to his fears, and now we will take the most important, most liberating step in our entire journey. We will completely change our attitude towards the problem itself. Listen carefully. Your self-sabotage is not a curse. It is your most accurate diagnostician. Your procrastination is not your weakness. It is your most faithful teacher. That inner paralysis that you hate so much is not a wall, but a signpost. Imagine a compass. Your resistance, your fear of a new beginning, this is the needle of this compass. And it does not spin chaotically. It always, with incredible, almost mystical precision, points to the same thing. It trembles and points exactly to the door in your inner house that you vitally need to enter. It points to the aspect of your life that requires immediate healing and integration. You want to know what your next growth point is? Look at what you are avoiding the most. Here we come to one of the greatest laws of psychology and mythology. The place of your greatest fear is the place of your greatest treasure. The dragon that guards the cave always sits on a pile of gold. Your wound is not just a wound. It is a portal to the power that you were forced to cut off from yourself in order to survive. The soul, your deep self, is infinitely wiser than your conscious ego, and it uses this crisis, this unbearable Groundhog Day, to force you to finally grow up. It sees that you have become too engrossed in endlessly rearranging the furniture in your small, safe living room, while the rest of the house is falling into disrepair. And the soul creates unbearable conditions, apathy, anguish, loss of meaning, to force you to stop this meaningless fuss, take a lantern, and finally go down into the basement. It pushes you towards your shadow not to destroy you, but so that you can find there a forgotten but vitally necessary part of yourself. And what you will find in this basement is not trash that needs to be thrown away. Jung, following the ancient alchemists, understood a great truth. The shadow is the prima materia. It is the black, heavy, unattractive lead that contains the potential for gold. Your task is not to fight this darkness, not to banish it, but to become an alchemist of your soul. Your task is to go down with respect and curiosity and begin the great work of turning this lead into your personal gold of wholeness. If your self-sabotage is a compass pointing to a door, then it is foolish to try to break its needle. It is wise to learn to read the map and understand why this door is so important, and this requires not brute force, but a completely different, more subtle and wise approach. For your entire conscious life, you have probably been trying to fight. You tried to defeat your procrastination, to break your apathy, to force yourself. But you cannot defeat your ego by force. It is a civil war within your psyche in which there will be no winners, and you will always be the loser. Why? Because the ego is the current government. It controls the army, your will. It manages the resources, your energy and attention. To fight it means to direct the full power of your own system against its center. This is a guaranteed defeat that leaves behind only the scorched earth of your self-esteem and total exhaustion. Every time you lose in this struggle, you only strengthen the ego's belief that any change is dangerous and leads to pain. Therefore, the path is not in struggle, but in integration, not in revolution, but in negotiation. You must change your role. Stop being a soldier obsessed with the idea of defeating an enemy that does not exist, and become a diplomat, a wise, patient, sensitive diplomat for your soul. What does a good diplomat do? He does not storm the fortress. He approaches the gates with a white flag. He studies the needs and fears of the other side. He looks for common ground and mutually beneficial solutions. Your task is not to break down the basement door, but to knock politely. Your task is to start a dialogue with that very frightened master of the house, with your ego. You must assure him that you are not going to create chaos and destroy his beautiful living room. You must convince him that in the basement live not monsters, but exiled family members. Yes, they are noisy. Yes, they are unpredictable. But they bring with them gifts without which the whole house cannot be truly alive and prosperous. Passion, creativity, intuition, life force. You must explain to your ego that without the energy from the basement, his living room, no matter how perfect it may be, will forever remain a museum. Beautiful, sterile, but dead. To outsmart the brain is not to deceive it. It means to stop treating it like an enemy and start treating it like a frightened but important partner. You have been a soldier on your own land for too long. It is time to become a wise ruler who unites all his lands into one prosperous kingdom. And how does any real diplomacy begin? It begins not with ultimatums, but with the warring parties sitting down at the negotiating table for the first time and receiving an equal, respectful right to speak. Now, we will organize such a negotiating table within you. I want to offer you one, but incredibly powerful practical exercise. Let's call it the safe dialogue technique. For this, you don't need anything but a pen and paper or a blank document on the screen. This is your first, safe step in the role of a diplomat for your soul. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. Title the first column, Voice of the Master of the House or Minister of Order. This is the platform for your ego. Your task is, with maximum honesty and empathy for this part of you, to write down from its perspective all the fears, concerns, and arguments against the changes you have planned. Do not censor. Let this voice speak completely. What does it say? If we start this and fail, it will be an unbearable shame. We will lose the stability we have been building for years. What will people say? They will think we are crazy. We have no right to do this. We have obligations. This is too chaotic. We will lose control. Let this voice speak its mind until it is exhausted. Then move on to the second column. Title it, Voice from the Basement, or The Exiled Genius. This is the platform for your shadow. And now do something completely different. Don't think. Let the words flow onto the paper themselves. What is this part of you screaming? What does it want? What is it tired of? I'm suffocating in this predictability. I want to create, get my hands dirty, make mistakes. Give me at least a sip of freedom, a sip of real life. I'm tired of being proper. I want to be alive. Remember how we dreamed as children. Where did you put all that? Do not be afraid of the anger, despair, irrational desires that may appear on paper. It is just energy that has been locked up for a long time. And here is the most important part. During this process, your role is not to be a judge. You are not the lawyer for the master of the house and not the defender of the voice from the basement. You are the space. You are the wise and impartial moderator of this first historic meeting. Your only task is to let both speak and to listen attentively with respect. Why does this work? Because the moment you take these 2 voices out of your head and put them on paper, magic happens. They cease to be your internal, tormenting noise and become objects for investigation. For the first time, your conscious ego, the master of the house, sees in black and white that the voice from the basement is not just chaos, but a carrier of vital energy. And the shadow, in turn, for the first time feels heard. Just by writing down these voices, you are already changing the architecture of your soul. You are building a bridge where before there was only a deaf, silent wall. This is the first act of integration. This is the beginning of peace. This 2-column exercise is not just a technique, it is a ritual. It is the first act of your new service to your wholeness. But it only opens the way to realizing a simple but absolutely life-changing truth. We began our journey with the image of a locked door and an invisible force pulling your hand away from the handle. For your entire life, you have probably been trying to break down that door. You used the battering ram of willpower. You looked for the lever of motivation. You exhausted yourself in this senseless siege. Now you see why it didn't work. You were trying to break into your own house. The key to getting out of Groundhog Day is not to find a heavier battering ram and not to break the door. It is to find within yourself the quiet courage to approach this door, insert the key into it, and slowly, with respect for what is behind it, turn it. So what is this key? Where can you find it? You don't need to look for it. You have always had it. This key is the simple but world-shaking acceptance of your wholeness. It is the deep bodily awareness that you are not just your bright, tidy, socially approved living room. You are the whole house in its entirety. You are also your dark, echoing basement full of treasures and fears. Your strength is not in the flawlessness of the facade, but in the strength of the entire building. And here is the main truth that sets you free. You don't have to get rid of parts of yourself to become better. You don't have to amputate your shadow to become purer or more effective. This is the thinking of a surgeon, not a creator. Your task is to become bigger, to become so big, so capacious, that there is a place in your consciousness for all your parts, for your strength and your weakness, for your courage and your fear, for your light and your darkness. Your current crisis, your apathy, is not a crisis of defect. It is a crisis of growth. Your old personality, your ego, has become too tight for you, like children's clothes on a grown-up. The soul demands expansion, and the pain you feel is the pain of growth. It is the cracking of the old shell from which something new, much stronger and more whole, is breaking through. So stop trying to win the war within yourself. Your task is to become a kingdom great and wise enough to have an honorable place for both your shining royal court and your wild, dark, primeval forests. A place for both your demons and your gods. Because only a whole ruler can truly rule. We have come a long way in this hour. We have descended from the brightly lit, predictable living room of our ego into the echoing, dark basement of our shadow. We began this journey with one seemingly practical question: how to outsmart the brain that sabotages our changes. And after all our research, after all the metaphors and stories, we have found the answer. And it is paradoxical in its simplicity. The greatest trick is to stop tricking. The greatest strategy is to stop fighting. We understood that the internal sabotage that seemed to us like a deaf, impenetrable wall on the way to a new life is not a wall at all. It is a bridge. Yes, a bridge that trembles with fear, a bridge shrouded in the fog of doubt, but nevertheless a bridge. And it leads in the most important direction for you to that vast, forgotten part of you that holds all your unclaimed life force, all your untold story, all your unrealized potential. Your problem is not a system error, it is an invitation. Your apathy is not a lack of energy, but all your colossal energy directed at guarding the entrance to this bridge. The soul is tired of your heroic but meaningless attempts to break through the wall and is now desperately asking you to just gather the courage and take the first step on this bridge. You were looking for a way to defeat your inner dragon, and it turned out that you just needed to learn how to fly on it. You thought your paralysis was a curse, but it was a sacred pause arranged by your soul so that you would finally stop running from yourself and start moving towards yourself. So the main insight I want to leave with you is simple. Stop treating the symptom. Hear the message. Your crisis is not a dead end. It is a turn inward towards your wholeness. And when this insight begins to transform from an idea in your head into your living, daily experience, everything changes. Not externally, not immediately, but inside where it really matters. Life after integration is not a life without fear. That would be a lie. Fear is part of our ancient security system, and it will not disappear. But your relationship with it will change. It is a life where fear is no longer your silent, all-powerful jailer who keeps you in a one-day cell. It becomes your respectful, albeit overly cautious advisor. You will learn to hear its voice. Careful, this is new territory. Are you sure we're ready for this? You will learn to thank it for its concern, but to reserve the right to make the final decision. You, not it, now sit on the throne of your kingdom. It is a life where you stop running from yourself and with endless curiosity begin to move towards yourself. Every bout of procrastination, every wave of apathy ceases to be a reason for self-flagellation and becomes a signal for investigation. Oh, interesting. What part of me am I ignoring right now? What voice from the basement is trying to reach me? You stop looking for the right answers in the external world because you become the place where the right questions are born. And then the most important thing happens. Groundhog Day ends. But it doesn't end when the external scenery work, city, surroundings magically changes. It ends the moment the main spectator of this endless play changes you. And when you change, you suddenly see new doors and new opportunities in the old scenery that you never noticed before. Because you are no longer looking at the world only through the eyes of your ego, but with the full completeness of your whole being. And before we part, I want to tell you something very personal and very important. Thank you. Thank you for walking this path to the end. In a world of endless information flow, in a culture of quick answers and superficial solutions, you have given this deep conversation the most valuable thing you have, your time and your full attention. This is not something to be taken for granted, and I deeply appreciate your trust, your willingness to look into your shadows, your courage to stay with uncomfortable questions and not turn away. This is an act of great courage. It is a quiet, invisible heroism in a world that constantly demands us to be simple, convenient, and understandable. But the soul is not simple, and you know that. And the most important thing I want you to take with you today is a feeling. The feeling that you are no longer alone on this journey. The moment you decided to click on this video and stay, you silently joined an invisible community, a community of seekers. People scattered all over the world, speaking different languages, but united by one aspiration to choose the difficult, but only living path to their wholeness. Everyone who decides on this descent into themselves lights a lantern for all who follow. Your work on yourself is not a selfish act. It is your contribution to the healing of the world. So know this, you are part of something bigger. You are not alone. And if you feel that such journeys and such a community are what you have been missing, you can help this beacon shine brighter. If this conversation was valuable to you, if it opened at least one new door in your inner world, and you are ready to continue this deep exploration of your soul, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and click the bell. That way you won't miss our next expeditions into inner space, to other unexplored continents of your personality. Every like you give this video is not just a number. In a world governed by algorithms, it is a powerful signal. A signal that deep, honest, and healing conversations are important. That there is a demand not only for entertainment, but also for meaning. Every like you give helps other seekers, just like you, find this haven in the endless ocean of content. Every comment you make, as we have already said, is not just words. It is a brick in the wall of that very safe space that we are all building here together. A space where you can be vulnerable without fear and honest without judgment. Thank you again for your courage to be yourself. And in the end, I want to leave you with one thought. Let it be your compass on days of doubt. Remember, your task is not to become someone else. Your task is to become, with courage and love, who you have always been.